Houston, and I hope you're having a great day. This is the second in a three-part series of on-demand modules around response to intervention. It's intended for two audiences, one for a facilitator that can take this process back into their school district or buildings and use it with a team. The second is for an individual who just wants to learn a little more about response to intervention. You will find links in the video description. The links are to materials and videos that will support your learning. Make sure you check it out. This second on-demand module focuses on the RTI Framework. It is essential that we get all the parts and pieces in place to meet the needs of 80% of our learners. Otherwise, we spend too much time and too many resources doing intervention with too many students. So let's get started. Well, as we discussed, this is climbing the RTI side of the pyramid, Tier 1 to Tier 2. So let's get going on this, moving on to the next slide. Our objectives today are to expand your understanding of essential response to intervention components. I do want everyone to keep in mind that learning in Module 2 was built on some learning from Module 1 regarding universal design for learning and the 8 powerful instructional strategies from Marzano and Hattie. Please check out Module 1 to boost your skills and knowledge with UDL and those 8 powerful instructional strategies. When you're working as a team, I hope that you will come to these agreements for your time together. Actively engage in the learning. We all learn from each other. Also listen to understand. It's not always easy to listen to others and give them time to think and process and express their thoughts. Think of possibilities. The first idea you have may not be your best one. And it's important to share the air. Variability. This represents those students in your classrooms. Every student has their strengths, their challenges, their interests, and it's important that we meet their needs in the classroom. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Shelley Moore's video called Don't Should on Me. It's not easy being not green.
Welcome to 5 More Minutes, helpful videos in 5 minutes or less that support the teaching and learning of all students. I am your host, Shelley Moore, and this episode is Don't Should on Me. Today, we're going back to my dots because I love my dots. I told you I'm obsessed with my dots. But our question for today about the dots is, have you ever wondered where this idea of green came from? I mean, what does it even mean to be green? The idea of greenness is a very early concept in education that is connected to standardization. And to understand standardization in education, we have to go back to the Industrial Revolution. Way back when, there was a flood of people moving to cities to work in factories. And to be successful in a factory, consistency was the key. The more similar and consistent your workers were, the more reliable and safe your product was. In a factory setting, the greener, the better. Public education was then created and designed with exactly this idea in mind, and it recreated conditions in schools to mimic the conditions in factories. So when kids became adults, they would have the skills to be successful as factory workers. It makes perfect sense. It was the demand at the time, and it's quite a smart strategy if you ask me. And so schools were created, and students were taught how to be green. They were taught to do the same thing, to work alone, to sit in rows, to respond to bells. Sounding a little familiar. Now, I don't know about you, but I was not a very green child, and I often struggled in school because I wasn't good at any of those things. I mean, I'm creative, I hate rules, I don't like working alone, I'm pretty much always late. This is pretty much an educational recipe for disaster. I prefer windows of arrival time. I had difficulty articulating this tension for a really long time, and I just really thought I was broken. It took me almost until I was 27 to finally realize that it was actually not me that was broken, but I was trying to exist in a very broken educational system. This happens to so many of us students and teachers who are still being expected to fit into this 19th century model of society when we are very, very much being propelled into the 21st century at warp speed. I mean, Kids are born knowing how to double tap. Education is close to 200 years off the mark, and more kids are struggling to fit into this archaic system. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So if you, like me, grew up as a multicolored, three-dimensional unicorn of twirling love, you also probably struggled in school. You may have also noticed that you got a few phone calls received by your mother that may have involved this word, should. This is where Shelley should be. This is what Shelley should be doing. This is the reading benchmark that Shelley should be reading at. I was shoulded on to death. Now, I saw a t-shirt once that said, "Don't shit on me," and let me tell you, this could be the new slogan of education systems worldwide. So here's my challenge for you. How would your classroom or school change if that's all we did? Let's take out the should. Let's change our question from where should you be, what's wrong with you, to where are you now, and what's your next step? Can you imagine how successful kids would be and how school would change if that was the language that we used? But in order for this to happen, we have to do one very important job, but it's a hard one because we did not grow up this way. We have to let go of average. We have to let go of the comparison and the competition and this expectation that kids need to be something other than exactly who they are. And even more, we have to give ourselves permission to do exactly the same thing. Because just like there isn't a standard kid, there's also no standardized teacher. Don't shoot on yourself either. Well, there you have it. That is today's 5 more minutes. How is this useful for you? Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. And remember to take a look on www.5moreminutes.com to check out supplemental readings, resources, and supporting research for this episode. See you later.
So, take a few moments, think about what is currently happening in your grade level, in your department, in your building to prevent the shit on me phenomenon. Take a moment, hit the pause button, and talk to a peer. So, let's talk about multi-tiered system of support, the umbrella. Response to intervention falls underneath of it. It's often sometimes even used interchangeably. I want to talk about how all these pieces fit together. It's important that when we look at students, that we look at response to intervention, but we also look at school and community collaboration. We talk about parent action, how our parents participate in their students' learning. We talk about professional development for our families, for our teachers, for our administrators. We talk about teamwork is essential in this multi-tiered system of support when we're working with RTI, and curriculum design, how we meet the needs of all of our learners, that essential tier 1, and a universal design for learning. I would be remiss if I didn't say, I want you to know, I truly understand that RTI has 2 sides to the pyramid and that they are woven very closely together. Positive behavior interventions and supports is essential to academic achievement. So keep that in mind as we move forward. When we talk about RTI, we talk about universal, targeted, and intensive supports. Every student receives universal supports, that tier 1. And then we layer on top of that, for some students, they receive targeted supports. That is just for some, in addition to universal supports. And then finally, we do have a few students who will need to receive intensive supports. That's in addition to, not instead of. This is a preventative model, and it's important to keep in mind that RTI and these supports is not a place, but a support. Targeted and intensive supports can take place in the classroom. I just want us to do a little bit more learning around multi-tiered system of supports and RTI, and I'm going to share this video. It's a really good video, but it's out of California, and it will refer to Orange County. So please, one thing I'd like you to do as you look at this video is not get stuck on California, because this applies no matter where you are, but take some notes so that you can list off those essential components of a multi-tiered system of support in RTI.
Hi, thanks for joining us. So, MTSS. Great. More education jargon. Let's break this one down. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports. That didn't help much, did it? Here's what it is. MTSS is a framework adopted by almost every district in Orange County that helps schools provide a support system that addresses each student's academic, behavioral, and social needs. MTSS isn't a singular program or strategy. It's like a giant toolbox filled with school programs, best practices, trainings, and assessments, all designed to create high expectations for students and ensure that no one falls through the cracks. In the past, students who were underperforming may have been targeted for special interventions, but that meant waiting until they were already, well, underperforming. MTSS is a proactive prevention system set up to make sure that all students are supported right from the beginning. Simply put, it's a system designed to stop the problem before it starts. As the name suggests, MTSS relies on 3 levels, or tiers. The first is the benchmark tier, which is where most of the proactive prevention occurs. Teachers are given resources and training to create classroom environments that are set up to manage students' social, emotional, and behavioral well-being while addressing each student's individual learning style using universal design for learning. Side note. Yes, universal design for learning sure sounds like more education jargon, and it is, but we'll save that for another time. For now, just know that it gives educators strategies for minimizing barriers to learning. Teachers offer flexibility in the way that information is presented, using a variety of methods to engage students, thereby providing more access to the curriculum. Tier 2 is the strategic tier, designed to give additional targeted instruction to the handful of students who did not progress or respond to the regular MTSS classroom environment. Finally, for students who are still having trouble, there's a third tier that provides individually targeted help. That's even more intensive, and they call this tier, wait for it, the intensive tier. Okay, so those are the tiers. But why is this called a system of supports? Well, at the heart of the system is a prescribed problem-solving process. MTSS has built-in benchmarks and evaluation methods for gathering concrete data about how students are doing. Using that data, teachers and staff collaborate to identify problems and put plans in place for evidence-based action and interventions. This system of supports, built upon this process, helps teachers and students. It extends beyond the classroom to the entire school, and often all the way out to the entire district. Oh, and it's not limited to mainstream K-12 students. MTSS can be integrated into classrooms serving pre-K students, English learners, GATE students, and special populations. Think of it as a learning foundation for all students. Whew. So, there you have it, multi-tiered system of supports. They aren't built in a day, and they take lots of planning, coordination, and the help of schools, districts, teachers, and parents. If you'd like to dive a little deeper into the subject, visit the website. And thanks for watching.
So you've heard that RTI, Response to Intervention, is a framework within a multi-tiered system of support. It is the foundation upon which we build all the work we do with students. So let's get a chance to review all the essential components of a multi-tiered system of support, that RTI framework. If you're back in your building or district, I'm going to ask you to create teams of 5 or 6. Each of the teams will be given 20 red solo cups. Yeah, red solo cups. We want to make this fun. And on each of those solo cups is one of the components of RTI. Together, you are going to build a structure that shows the best way to support learning through RTI in your building and district. I'm going to ask you to spend about 10 to 15 minutes on that. And then one of your participants will volunteer to stay back and explain your structure to the other participants. That will give the other participants a chance to go and look at other structures. I am going to put your facilitator on the hot spot here, and I'm hoping that they will give a prize to that best structure that shows the support of learning around RTI. So hit the pause button, or you can go to the next slide where I remind you to use a timer and the directions for this activity of learning. If you're an individual, I'm going to ask you to move to the next 3 slides. And then on those 3 slides, I have numbers next to each component. I just had a really hard time finding a way for you to build a structure in this video. So I'm going to ask you to organize your structure using the numbers of the 20 components. What should be on the bottom? What should be the support of your RTI system and your support? What should be in the middle and what should be on the top? So if you're a team back in the district, start using your solo cups and build your structure and hit the pause button. If you're an individual, please use the next 3 slides to organize your structure. Thank you. Hit the pause button until you get a chance to read these 8 components. You'll need to hit that pause button again to read the next 7, which brings 15 components. There's 20 altogether. And then here is the final 5. You might have to rewind a little bit to make sure you go back and forth to see all the 20 components. Thanks for building your structure as an individual. Now what? This is a time for your team or you as an individual to reflect. I really need you to go to the description of the video and pull up the RTI rubric. I want you to be thinking about what is next for your team or for you as an individual. Where can you have an impact? Where can we have an impact? What should we do first? And it's not, we aren't doing this or we're not doing that. It's not yet, but we will do. So please take a few minutes with that RTI rubric. If you don't have time, like in a TPT or a BLT, it's important that you come back to that. Please take time to look at the rubric and make some plans, set some goals for you as an individual, you as a building, or for your district team. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.